Imagine, if you will, the quiet ache of betrayal. Not the kind that merely stings for a moment and fades, but the kind that settles deep within your chest, heavy, unspoken, and sacred. It's the betrayal that came from those you trusted most, the ones who smiled at your table while sharpening the knives beneath it, the ones who knew your vulnerabilities because you let them in, not because you were weak, but because you were pure. And when they betrayed you, it wasn't just an act of cruelty, it was a violation of something holy, a desecration of the sacred trust that binds souls. You see, betrayal doesn't happen from afar. It comes from the heart's closest quarters. That's why it cuts so deep. And perhaps, for a while it seemed like they got away with it. Perhaps they laughed. Perhaps they prospered. Perhaps they even told the world a story where you looked like the villain. But now something has shifted. Because heaven doesn't stay silent forever. God in his divine justice has been watching. And while the world cheered for their lies, God was writing his truth. Where they tried to bury you in the pain they caused, God began planting something eternal. And as your tears fell silently, the soil of your suffering became fertile ground for his judgment. This is where we must step into divine understanding. There's a truth the broken-hearted need to grasp. God doesn't sleep on betrayal. In fact, betrayal builds a curse. Not because you curse them, but because what they did built its own consequence. You didn't have to seek revenge. You didn't have to raise your voice. You just had to stand still. And now you begin to see why. God is not mocked. And when the innocent are mistreated, when the kind are ridiculed, and when the loyal are betrayed, there is a reckoning written into the fabric of heaven. That's the sacred weight of justice. And today, they are not just facing guilt. They are walking in the very curse they created. Don't misunderstand. This isn't about wishing harm. This isn't about becoming bitter. It's about understanding the holy balance of divine justice. It's about knowing that every choice has a cost, and when someone builds a house with bricks of betrayal, they will eventually have to live in it. So what is God doing now? He's revealing. He's unraveling the masks. He's shaking the foundations built on deception. He's making the betrayal loud for those who once celebrated it silently. And while they pretend nothing is wrong, everything around them starts to break. Their peace, gone. Their sleep, haunted. Their smiles hollow. Their success, empty. And yet, here you are, still standing, still breathing, still rising, because what was meant to break you became the very thing that God used to strengthen you. And here's the most beautiful part. You didn't have to become like them. You stayed soft, you stayed faithful, you stayed quiet, and heaven noticed. Now the very curse they built is speaking. The lies they told are turning on them. The stories they created are trapping them, and the pain they gave is coming home. Not because you wished it, but because God is a God of order, of righteousness, of truth. Now is your time to understand the deeper truths behind what happened. Let's reflect together on 7 spiritual revelations that emerge when betrayal builds a curse, and how God makes them live in it. There's a terrible arrogance in betrayal, a false belief that once the act is done, it disappears, that the wound inflicted can be hidden and the betrayer can walk away untouched. But betrayal is never forgotten, not by the soul it pierced, and certainly not by God. Every act of betrayal is a seed. To human eyes it may seem buried, but to divine vision it is planted. And what's planted, whether good or evil, will grow. That's the spiritual law. They thought walking away from your pain meant the story was over. They believed the silence was victory, but God never closed the book. He just turned the page. You see, betrayal is a seed planted in time, and time doesn't forget. Time nourishes what's sown. And when betrayal is planted in the soil of deception, manipulation, and cruelty, it doesn't bring forth life, it brings forth judgment. They believed that no one saw what they did behind closed doors, but the one who made both darkness and light sees all. And when God sees a pure heart shattered, he does not stay silent. The betrayal they buried wasn't buried at all. It was noticed, recorded, and destined to grow into the very thorns that now surround their lives. There's a moment that comes in every betrayer's life when they begin to feel the consequences of what they thought would stay hidden. Their relationships begin to fail. Their joy becomes fleeting. They find themselves restless, unable to explain the weight pressing on their chest. That is the harvest of the seed they planted. That is the curse beginning to grow. It often starts quietly. A broken connection here, a missed opportunity there. But it grows, and as it grows, it twists around every area of their life, choking the peace they once took for granted. Why? Because they thought betrayal was an action, but it was actually a seed, a spiritual transaction, a curse waiting to be born. And God, in his holy patience, allows time to reveal the harvest. He doesn't need to strike down instantly. He waits, he watches, and when the time is ripe, he lets the fruit of betrayal speak for itself. They thought they buried it, but God knew it was planted. And the pain you carried in silence is now the very storm they must weather. The curse didn't come from you. It came from the choice they made. That's the weight of betrayal. They never walk away unchanged. So, if you're still aching from the betrayal, remember this: what hurt you didn't vanish. It planted something. And what they sowed in evil will not return to them empty. Heaven has watched the soil, and the harvest is now upon them. When people betray the innocent, they believe they're building freedom for themselves. Freedom to live how they want. Freedom to manipulate a new story. Freedom to enjoy success without accountability. But in truth, what they're building is a prison. Not with bricks and bars, but with deception and lies. And it is only a matter of time before that prison closes in on them. You see, betrayal never ends at the moment of the act. It ripples, it spreads, it demands maintenance. A lie has to be protected by another lie. A false face has to be worn in every room. A web of deceit must be spun tighter and tighter until even the betrayer can no longer breathe. They may seem happy on the surface. Their social posts may glow with joy. Their words may drip with confidence. But look deeper. Look at their eyes when they think no one's watching. Listen to the tremble in their voice when truth draws near. Watch their reactions when someone speaks of integrity or loyalty. That's the prison beginning to tighten, because when you betray someone who gave you nothing but truth, you're not just harming a person, you're offending the divine order. God built this universe on truth, and anything built on lies will collapse. Slowly, sometimes, but surely. The more they try to silence the truth, the louder it echoes in their mind. The more they run from what they did, the more life traps them in cycles they cannot escape. This is the curse that now wraps around their daily existence. They thought they were escaping your light, but they stepped into a personal darkness they cannot shake. What once felt like freedom now feels like confinement. What once felt like victory now feels like a void. They built a house of betrayal, and now they're forced to live in it. There is no exit from a prison built by your own hands, except repentance, and that's something pride rarely allows. Their deception is no longer just a memory, it's a mirror. Everywhere they turn, it reflects their own face back at them. And that's the torment of a betrayer. They must live with the truth, even if they deny it. They must walk among the ruins of what they destroyed, pretending it wasn't their fault. This is what divine justice looks like. God doesn't need to punish in loud ways. Sometimes he simply lets people walk into the structures they created and dwell there. What they meant to be your downfall has become their own confinement, and God is the witness. One of the most misunderstood qualities of God is his timing. To the wounded heart, divine justice can feel delayed, distant, or even denied. You might cry out in silence, "Lord, how can you watch and do nothing?" But heaven doesn't move in haste, it moves in holiness. Justice from God is not like human vengeance. It's not emotional, it's not impulsive, it's perfect. And it always arrives when the soul is most ready to witness its truth. When someone betrays you and walks away smiling, it tests your faith in justice. You wonder how someone could tear you apart and still flourish. You ask why they get applause while you nurse invisible wounds. But the answer isn't in what you see. It's in what God is doing behind the curtain of time. Divine justice is never absent. It is simply aligning all the pieces for a revelation so complete, so undeniable, that no one, not even the betrayer, can escape its clarity. God doesn't react the way humans do. We demand instant answers. We want proof in the present. But God is sculpting something eternal. He allows the betrayer time to grow confident, to believe they've succeeded, to believe their mask is enough. And then, when the time is right, he removes the mask, not just in front of others, but in front of themselves. He lets their own hands pull down the walls they built. This is the weight of divine justice. It is silent until it is thunderous. It is invisible until it is overwhelming. And once it begins, there is no human power that can stop it. The curse they are now living in wasn't cast by your pain. It was measured and delivered by heaven's hand. Every tear you shed was counted. Every moment of your silence was recorded. God watched, not to abandon you, but to perfect the moment when justice would be seen, not just felt. The betrayer may call it coincidence when their peace starts to crumble. They may blame circumstances when doors begin to close, but you will know. You will feel the quiet confirmation deep in your spirit that God did not forget, that your pain wasn't wasted, that your heartbreak was not in vain. It's tempting to try and take justice into your own hands. It's tempting to prove yourself, to expose their lies, to scream your truth. But the highest form of faith is surrender, letting go and trusting that heaven knows how to handle what wounded you. The betrayer thought they were walking into freedom, but what they stepped into was a divine setup. And when God moves, it is with precision. He doesn't just confront the act, he deals with the heart. He turns every false gain into a burden. He turns every lie into a chain. He turns the very weapons they used against you into the very things that unravel their peace. That's what divine justice looks like. And all you had to do was remain faithful. There's a sacred kind of peace that lives in the heart of the innocent. It's not loud, it's not prideful, it's quiet, steady, and divine. When you loved them, you gave them not just your time or your kindness, you gave them access to that peace. You welcomed them into a sanctuary you had built with God, and when they betrayed you, they didn't just leave, they ripped that peace apart. In that moment, you may have felt like they took something from you that you couldn't rebuild. But peace that comes from God isn't destroyed by man. It may shatter for a moment, but it returns stronger. What's more revealing is what happens to the one who stole it. They thought they could step out of your life free and unbothered. But peace is not something you take from someone else. It's something you carry within, or you don't carry at all. And when someone betrays the pure-hearted, they leave with guilt wrapped in silence. They may laugh, they may celebrate, they may act victorious, but inside something starts to hollow. They don't sleep like they used to. They don't laugh like they used to. There's a gnawing in their spirit that no success can erase. And what is it? It's the echo of the peace they once felt when they stood beside you. A peace that didn't come from them, but from the presence of God that you carried. You see, the pure draw God's favor. When someone betrays the pure, they distance themselves not just from a person, but from a divine covering, and that loss is unbearable. At first, they may not realize it. They may blame everything else, but slowly, as life presses on, they'll notice the restlessness that never leaves, the anxiety that can't be medicated, the emptiness that no relationship can fill. That is the consequence no one sees coming. They try to wound you and walk away whole, but the very peace they shattered is the one they can't seem to recover, and no amount of noise can quiet what they now carry. It is one of God's subtle judgments that those who steal peace will be denied it. It's not revenge, it's balance. And now, while you rise and begin to heal, they are falling into a silence that screams louder every day. Peace was never something they owned, it was something they borrowed from your presence. And now, they're lost without it. There's a different kind of miracle that often goes unnoticed. Not the miracle that removes pain, but the one that preserves purity in the middle of it. When betrayal comes, it doesn't just aim to break your trust. It aims to poison your heart. It wants to make you bitter. It wants to twist your compassion into suspicion, your softness into hardness, your kindness into defense. That is the deeper war betrayal starts. It's not just about what they did. It's about what they hoped it would turn you into. But God sees that. And His greatest work is often not in changing your circumstances, but in guarding your soul from being reshaped by the hurt. While they walk away thinking they succeeded in crushing your spirit, heaven surrounds you with silent strength. God does something sacred. He makes sure your pain does not become your personality. He protects the heart that trusts Him, even when it's bleeding. The world is full of people who once loved openly but were turned cold by betrayal. People who once gave freely but now hold everything back. But not you. And that's not because you're stronger than others. It's because God stepped in. He covered your wounds in ways no one could see. He whispered into the darkest parts of your soul, "Don't harden, this pain will pass, and I will make sure your softness becomes your strength." Betrayal tries to shape you into the very image of the one who hurt you. It tempts you to become calculating, guarded, and selfish. But God is the great preserver of innocence. He lets you feel the fire, but keeps you from being consumed. You may cry, you may collapse, you may even scream into your pillow at night, but through it all, your heart remains whole because God holds it together. And that kind of protection is rare. It's a holy armor the world doesn't recognize. People will wonder how you can still be kind after what you've endured. They'll question how your eyes still carry warmth, how your spirit still welcomes others, how your hands still reach to help. They don't know that it wasn't your doing. It was God's intervention. He didn't just protect you from the betrayer's actions. He protected you from becoming a reflection of them. That's the highest form of justice. Because when you walk through betrayal and still emerge with a clean heart, the enemy's greatest weapon has failed. You remain exactly who God created you to be, unbroken in soul, untainted in character. They tried to damage your spirit, but God turned the tables. He made the wound a well. He made the scar a story. He made the loss a lesson. And most importantly, He made your heart a holy place that betrayal could not corrupt. So when you feel the temptation to shut down, to close off, to stop caring, remember who protected you. Remember that what they tried to break, God preserved. You are not bitter, you are better. Not because of them, but because of Him. When you are betrayed, the worst pain often isn't just the act, it's the lies that follow. The distorted stories, the twisted narratives. The attempts to rewrite history so they look righteous, while you carry the shame. That's the cruelty of betrayal. It doesn't just wound the heart, it tries to assassinate your character. They may have spread rumors, painted you as the villain, claimed your love was manipulation, your kindness was weakness, your silence was guilt. And for a while the world may have believed them. Their lies moved faster than your truth could. And you stood there, watching your name be dragged through mud while your heart screamed for justice. But here's what they didn't know. Truth doesn't panic. It doesn't shout. It doesn't chase the crowd. It waits. Because truth is a shelter built by God, and once you run to it, no lie can touch you. At first, it feels unfair. You feel exposed, defenseless, unheard. But then something begins to happen. Slowly, the cracks in their story begin to show. The inconsistencies start surfacing. Their mask starts slipping. And the very people who once doubted you begin to see something deeper. You never changed. Your integrity remained. Your words stayed consistent. Your spirit remained aligned with truth. This is where the real power of God's justice unfolds. He doesn't fight the lie with louder noise. He reveals the truth with quiet endurance. Your stability becomes your vindication. Your peace becomes your protest. And truth becomes your strongest defense. The shelter of truth doesn't erase the past, but it reclaims your name. It places a light around you that others begin to notice. They start to ask, how did you survive? Why didn't you strike back? Why does your heart still shine? And your life itself becomes the answer. That's how their lies begin to crumble, not with confrontation, but with contrast. As they spiral deeper into confusion, you rise into clarity. As they manipulate people's opinions, you walk in freedom from needing approval. And while they burn bridges, you build altars. They spoke lies to bury you, but those lies became the very soil from which your truth emerged. The ones who once turned away from you will turn back. The ones who laughed will begin to wonder. And the ones who believed their version of you will meet the real you and be moved by what God preserved. Truth doesn't rush to defend itself. It stands like a mountain, still, unmoved, eternal. And now, while they wrestle with the web of their own deception, you are sheltered beneath the truth God declared over you before they ever betrayed you. They thought it was the end of your story. They believed their betrayal would define you. They believed the pain they caused would paralyze you. They assumed that stripping you of trust, reputation, support, or peace would be enough to destroy your future. But what they didn't understand is this: God never builds greatness without first allowing some breaking. And what looked like ruin to the world was actually construction in heaven. Yes, you were wounded. You were shattered, confused, and shaken. You sat in silence, wondering how everything collapsed so suddenly, and you doubted if God had truly seen what they did. But what you didn't see in that moment, what you couldn't have seen, is that God wasn't ignoring your pain. He was preparing your platform, because this is the divine mystery. God does not waste betrayal. He transforms it. The very ashes they left behind are what He now uses to write your new beginning. The very lies they whispered become the background noise to a louder truth God is about to declare over your life. You see, when someone tries to ruin what God has blessed, they actually expose it to be rebuilt in divine strength. And when God rebuilds, He doesn't just restore what was taken, He multiplies it. He adds weight to your name, He adds authority to your voice, He gives you favor in places that once rejected you. He turns their weapons into your testimony. This is where their curse turns on them, because they didn't just try to hurt you, they tried to end what God started. And when someone tries to curse what God has called, they inherit the very destruction they plotted, not from your hands, but from the law of heaven. And what's left for you? A story so powerful that even your enemies can't deny it. A journey so redemptive that your past can't stain it. A light so strong that no betrayal can dim it. The betrayal that was supposed to define you becomes the very proof that God was always with you. So don't be afraid of the stage they forced you onto. It was never meant to humiliate you. It was meant to elevate the work of God in your life. You're not standing there to perform. You're standing there as living evidence, evidence that God sees, that God judges, and that God restores. Their betrayal built a curse, but it did not destroy you. In fact, it revealed something they never counted on: your resilience, your purity, your divine covering. What they meant for evil became the very instrument of God's justice. And now, as they walk through the consequences of their own decisions, you walk in the grace of a God who never forgot your tears. You didn't have to fight them, you didn't have to prove anything, you simply had to survive. And you did. You are still here, stronger, wiser, and more anchored in your purpose than ever before. Because God doesn't just restore, He elevates. He lets them live in the curse they created, not out of cruelty, but out of truth. And He allows you to rise from the ruins they left behind, not as a victim, but as a witness. So keep walking with grace. Keep your heart clean, because your story is not one of defeat. It is a story of divine reversal. Let them live in what they built. You're stepping into what God has been building for you all along, and the world will see it, because their betrayal may have spoken first, but God always speaks last.